What's going on, everyone? Mike Kadlick, Tayler Kyles here for CLNS Media. Above the game field here at Gillette Stadium for our first Patriots Daily pregame show of the season. We're powered by Game Time and Prize Picks. Taylor, I'm excited. We're finally here. It's actually a real game. There's players coming in. There's entrances. There's Scott Peters doing push-ups in the end zone. There's game jerseys. It's super fun. The atmosphere is exciting. I mentioned we're powered by Game Time, actually. So if you're watching this show and you want to get down here, you can get in for as low as $22 right now on the Game Time app. Yeah.
That ain't bad.
Not bad. Use code
for Joe Milton tickets? Are you kidding me?
Think about it like this. Game Time, use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Those terms do apply, obviously, but you could maybe get in here for $2. I don't know if that's how it works, but 22 minus 20, not that bad. So get in here. A big game for Joe Milton. You mentioned Joe Milton off the top. So let's start right there with the quarterbacks. Yeah. Obviously, Drake Maye is going to be sort of the main attraction, the main event here today. Rookie, number 3 overall pick. We know all that. But something that I'll be curious about is, how they split those reps up. When Drake Maye comes in, if they let him through the second half, etc. We heard from Gerard Mayo, obviously, earlier this week that all 4 guys are going to play. Yep. Everyone's going to play if healthy, is what he told us after that. He said that Jacoby will start. Besides that, we don't really know anything. So it's since then sort of, predicted that Brissett will be early. We'll get Drake Maye after that. Maybe go through the second half, I think, depending on how the offensive line holds up and things like that. And then we'll see the other 2 in Zappe and Milton throughout the second half. But that's what we think. What do you think they should do? How do you think this should play out? What's smart for them going forward here?
I think getting your young guys as much time on the field as possible should be the priority. Jacoby Brissett, obviously, you want to see what this offense starts to look like on the field, especially with 3 preseason games as opposed to what we used to have, which was 4, right. Where really for veterans it was 3. Now they really only have 2. So Jacoby Brissett, I do think should get a couple. I'd say the same for Bailey Zappe. I think he should go after Drake Maye, but I do think he should get a couple drives in there just so you can see, okay, what do we have in this veteran potential trade chip? But with Drake Maye and Joe Milton, I think that's where you really want to see, especially Drake Maye, obviously, that's where you want to see how far he's come, how he looks against, not an NFL defense per se, but at least a different team. Because with the Patriots, we've seen, one, he's running with the 2s, which has been, its own issue on the offensive front, but also he's throwing against a lot of backups. Some guys who would be starters, the Patriots do a decent job of mixing up the personnel groupings, but again, you want to see what he looks like against different competition, maybe see if he's more aggressive. He's mentioned he wants to air it out more. Didn't have success on the 3 attempts that we've seen in him from recent practices. And then Joe Milton. Maybe this is selfish for me, honestly. I think maybe the realistic choice that you should do is maybe half of the second half Bailey Zappe, half Joe Milton. I want as much Joe Milton as possible.
Oh, yeah.
I want to see the arm talent. I also want to see if he can consistently win underneath and take the shots that present themselves. So, yeah, I think the young guys are the ones who should get the majority of reps, but obviously you also want to see what your veterans can do as well.
For sure. We mentioned this early in our crossover show with Brian and Alex earlier this week, where it's going to be fluid, and things will change depending on, for example, the offensive line, the health of the offensive line, how well they perform. Do you think that should dictate what they do with Drake Maye here? For example, he comes out, 2-3 drives in, call it, right? And it's the second quarter, and he's getting the crap kicked out of him. Do you pull him, and do you let it, do you say, all right, we're not going to do this to the guy this early, or do you make him kind of fight through something like that? Because I feel like that's, there's a lot of things where, quarterbacks are tough and you want to be, go through adversity and things like that. And I feel like there's kind of a fine line, a happy medium to walk there where, you let them get hit and you let them feel what an NFL sack feels like tonight on day one. Or is it, okay, let's not make this a David Carr thing where, you break the rookie sack record in your rookie year. So I guess what's your opinion on, where they walk that fine line with Drake Maye, pulling him out, keeping him in, and how fluid will it really be?
Drake Maye is going to have plenty of opportunities to show how tough he is.
Yeah.
The preseason should not be one of those times. Now, you take one hit, obviously get back up. That's okay. A lot of these players mention how, for some guys, you need to get hit to really get into the game. So, if he has to take a hit or 2, fine. But if you can see the offensive line simply is not holding up and he is in mortal danger, yeah, pull him. It's not that serious. This is the preseason. You got joint practices next week where you can see what he looks like against an NFL defense without getting hit. So I do not think it makes sense to risk the potential face of your franchise long term in his first preseason game.
We mentioned that banged up offensive line. We saw it, we've really seen it the last couple weeks. But on Tuesday, City So, second-year player out of, where did he go to school?
Eastern Illinois.
Eastern Illinois?
That's
no,
right.
Wait.
I'm almost positive it's Eastern Illinois. Tell us in the chat.
Yeah, where'd City So go to school? Anyway, I'm trying to add context for no reason, but he didn't practice all day Tuesday, and he's one of the first guys out here.
Team drills. We saw him. I think he was warming up. Eastern Michigan?
Okay.
Really?
Thanks,
My
Alvin.
bad. Who went to Illinois? All right, that's
Someone.
ridiculous.
Anyway, yeah. So City
Live
South,
shows.
Eastern Michigan, second-year player there. He doesn't practice much at all on Tuesday. One of the guys there, maybe trying to, I guess, wean into the season because he is so important to that offensive line. He's out here early with trainers, with Scott Peters, kind of working through something. Is that a guy, A, you want to see play tonight? B, what do you make of him, getting the early workout here? It doesn't look like he's going to play. It's sort of during the season, there's a lot of guys who come out here with, the top trainers and work with them. So what do you make of it?
Yeah, so he's working out with Deron Harmon, obviously Gerard Mayo. Oh my gosh, Deron Mayo.
First one. We're
that was wild. I
here.
knew in my head I was saying it over and over, and I was like, don't get it confused with Deron Harmon. Deron Mayo was out here working with City So, putting him through some conditioning work, some of the mirroring drills with Scott Peters that you'd see at the Combine. I honestly don't know what to make of it. It was super early. There weren't a lot of players out, and then he did end up leaving the field with Deron Mayo. But I think, especially for a guy like City So, who's done so well already, who you expect to be a core piece of your offensive line, if he is even, 20% not okay, I don't think this is the time to try to push him. You got a year of tape on him. Obviously, you got practice tape that's more recent in Scott Peters' system, but I don't think week one of the preseason is when you need to stress that, especially for an experienced guy. I think, hold off. You got joint practices next week. You have the actual preseason game next week. I think that's when you maybe want to see how all the skills he's learned in the Scott Peters system apply, but not if he's not ready to go. We've already seen injury cripple so far this offensive line to the point where now, third and fourth string tackles are mixing in with the twos, so do not risk it with City So.
The thing that's tough with injuries at this point in time, and it's different with City So and a guy who I'm going to mention before we get into our, 5 players to watch and things like that, but like a guy like Tyquan Thornton, who is dealing with injury, probably wants to get out here. He needs to go earn that spot. It's like, do you let him come out here? And again, it's soft tissue. It's going to be tough. It might take a while. If you haven't seen our shows or haven't heard, Tyquan Thornton told us on Tuesday that he is dealing with a soft tissue injury. He didn't specify where, but that he's working through it. The team's working through it. He's been off and on in team drills, out of team drills, doing wind sprints on the side and stuff. But that wide receiver room, which we'll talk about a little bit in our players to watch, there's 3, 4, maybe or 2, maybe 3 to 4 locks, and then the rest is kind of a mystery with Juju and Booty and those guys. And Tyquan's in that mix. He's gonna want to get out here and play. And the fact that he can't is tough. And you kind of have to walk again that fine line. Do we put him out here to earn his spot? City So is obviously a different story, but just it's tough, and it's tough to kind of have to deal with those so early on in the preseason. All right, let's do. We each have 5 players to watch here. So what I'll do, I have them all written down. They might have skipped Taylor's head already. So I'm gonna give.
I need help.
I'm gonna give Taylor his. He's gonna go into why. It'll come back to me. I'll give mine, and we'll go back and forth through our 5 players to watch. So Tayler Kyles is number 1, maybe not number 1, number 5. Not in any order, but a player to watch for him is defensive tackle Tristan Hill. Why?
Yes. So I actually watched a lot of tape last night because Alex Barth has been saying Tristan Hill for like a couple weeks now. Once the pads came on, Tristan Hill definitely did start to pop. You saw him mix in with the first defense, and he's been disruptive. He got his hand on a pass, I think. He's been involved in the backfield. And then I actually watched his tape. This is someone who was a second-round pick back in 2019 and has shown the kind of flashes that the Patriots don't really have on the defensive interior without Christian Barmore. Obviously, no one is going to replace the size, the power, the athleticism, everything that Christian Barmore brings. But then you look at guys like Devon Godshaw and Mike Purcell and Daniel Aquale and Jeremiah Farms, even Armand Watts. They do give you pass rush as well as some run stopping, but I think Tristan Hill brings a different level of explosiveness and power. He's a bit of a smaller guy where he can get blown off the ball a little bit, but again, that explosiveness that I think could be really key, especially on pass rush downs for this Patriots defense. So I'm going to keep my eye on him as someone who could potentially factor in for the Patriots in some of those more obvious pass rush situations. On my roster projection, I didn't have him making it, but I did mention he was someone to watch.
Guy definitely to watch, especially with the Christian Barmore situation now, trying to find some depth at that position, things like that. I'm going to go with the easy and obvious one right on the bat. It's number 10. It's Drake Maye. There's so many reasons to qualify it. There's so many things to say. Number 3 overall pick, potential future of the franchise. Hasn't gotten a ton of reps with the ones throughout camp. I know that there really won't be many of that tonight on the field because not all the ones are going to play. Yeah. But what I'm curious to see is, there's been a ton of times over the last couple weeks where you can tell, A, you mentioned it earlier, he wants to be aggressive, but B, he's scrambling a lot to try and make a play. Yeah. And sometimes you can't tell if it's him coming off a read too early and saying, oh shit, I got to get out of here and make a play, or if it's him being like, look, I don't have this, I don't have that, I'm going to use my athleticism to make a play. then when he does it in practice, he has the red jersey, he gets 2 yards down, a guy taps him on the shoulder, and they blow it dead. So I want to see that stuff out here tonight, like the extending plays Drake Maye that we haven't seen since he was playing in North Carolina.
And he's touched on that with us, that's his play style.
Right.
He's going to use his legs. He's going to extend plays. Now, when the bullets are flying, and, T.C. McCartney told us way early on in the offseason when we spoke to him that Drake Maye needs to get to his first read and his second read. What happens after that is on him. That's when, he's going to have the opportunity to make that Drake Maye magic. So, yeah, out here against, again, a different defense that he's not used to. See if he really can elevate the offensive line, the wide receivers, because he's not going to have a full complement of necessarily NFL-ready talent. Obviously, Javon Baker, Jalen Poker, talented players. We don't know if they're ready to start NFL games quite yet, although we all hope they can. So that'll be really cool to see if Drake Maye can, elevate those guys.
You mentioned him, Taylor. Player number 2 for you, rookie wide receiver Javon Baker. Tell us what you want to see from him tonight.
I want to see Javon Baker, 1, catch everything thrown his way, and 2, I want to see him on some of the plays near the boundary. Now, this is an area where, to be fair, there was the play in the last practice we saw, ridiculous effort with Christian Gonzalez right on his hip where he makes a full acrobatic diving attempt to make the catch. Didn't get both feet in bounds. That play, especially now that there are more angles that have come out, that isn't the best example of when he fails to stay in bounds.
Right.
But there have been times in camp where he'll jump in the air when really you'd like him to plant his feet and keep them on the ground so he can drag them as opposed to jumping and hoping that he can land in a position where he can get both feet in. So I want to see the sideline and boundary awareness. I want to see the strong hands. And obviously, I want to see the playmaking ability. I want to see him get downfield. I want to see him moss some guys like we were seeing early on this offseason. And I just want to see Javon Baker be the kind of dominant ISO weapon that I think he can be.
I'm going to stick with the rookie wide receiver trend with Jalen Polk because, everything, not everything, but, what you say about Baker, the flashiness, the mossing, the get your popcorn ready stuff, that's not really Jalen Polk. He's just Mr. Reliable. And I've talked about it. I talked about it throughout the preseason. I've talked about it during camp. He came on early and, showed how reliable he can be. I keep going back to it, but, it's stuck in my head with him where they're in a 2-minute drill. They want to get to, get in field goal range, and they throw it to him, and they expect him to go and get down and, be smart and get the ball, throw it to the referee, what have you. Like, that kind of stuff so early as a rookie just tells me that they're going to rely on him a lot in this offense. So I want to see that tonight because it's kind of, they've kind of weaned off it a little bit with him. He hasn't been as good as he was early. I don't think he's been bad necessarily.
It's really production. It's not like he actually performs.
Kevin Stone, everybody.
Just sent us a lovely gesture.
Yeah.
But it's more like a lack of production on a consistent basis. And we always talk about there's so many mouths to feed. It's hard to tell, did Jalen Polk do something wrong that he's not getting looks? Or are they just trying to get all these receivers in a really tight contested battle more times to prove what they've got? So, yeah, I agree. The consistency hasn't been there in terms of what we see on the field, but when the ball's thrown his way, generally, he is that Mr. Reliable.
And so that's why I'm excited to see, game situation, down and distance, where you're going to go with the football, not having to, blow it dead with a line bust or something like that. Like, how consistent can he be on a night like tonight? How much is he going to play to? We'll kind of dictate that.
Lots.
Yeah, no.
Enough. Maybe not lots. Enough. I'm being selfish. I'm sorry.
I agree. All right, number 3, Taylor. O'Shea Zimenez.
Yes.
Talk
Zimenez, whose name we've been pronouncing right this entire time.
But
no, O'Shea Zimenez, especially because we don't know what Matt Judon's status is going to be for this season. If they, sweeten the deal a little bit so he stays for a year, if they reach an extension, if Matt Judon doesn't like what's going on with the team and he just sits out, whatever. O'Shea Zimenez is going to be a very important piece in this defense, I think, rotationally, especially think about Joshua Uche. He hasn't been practicing the past few days. And with Joshua Uche, as great as 2022 was, and as much as he did flash at times last season, consistency and availability have been two of the biggest issues for Uche. The only reliable guy that you can count on the edge is Anthony Jennings, with obviously Keon White and Dietrich Wise in the mix as well. But Zimenez, one, gives you pass rush and run stopping ability, that every down ability that you would get from a Matt Judon. And on top of that, if you need him to play inside linebacker, he can do that too. Hasn't in Patriots camp, but I'm curious to see if they kind of flex his versatility and put him in some different positions, especially with Jelani Tavai, or I think Jelani Tavai should play, but Sione Takitaki, he hasn't been practicing, still on PUP. He's not going to be around. Might be some more opportunities inside.
Before we get to the rest of them, making picks on real NFL games is now back with Prize Picks, and we have a slate for you. I'll tweet it after the show, but I mentioned 2 of them, Drake Maye, Javon Baker, and we're going to throw in a Carolina Panther rookie, Jatavion Sanders.
Yeah.
A 3-rookie, 3-pick selection here on Prize Picks. Drake Maye to throw more than 67.5 passing yards.
Oh, hell yeah.
Javon Baker to have more than 24.5 receiving yards.
Oh, he better.
And we're going Homer and we're going with Ja'Tavion Sanders to have less than 21 receiving yards.
I disagree, but I hope we're right on that pick.
Come on.
He's fast. He's fast.
Yeah,
and we're talking about defenses that probably, obviously in the preseason, guys can't tackle. So we'll see. I hope you're right.
My thing with that is I think Sanders is probably vying for their number one tight end spot because the other guy they have is Tommy Tremble, who I don't know how much they actually like him, and you draft a tight end early. So if they want to, kind of save him and not, throw him out here as much in the preseason game, less than 21.5 receiving yards. Head over to PrizePicks, use code CLNS for a 100% deposit match bonus up to $100. Terms apply there. All right, Taylor, I am going to give you 2 with my next one. Mm-hmm. It's 2 cornerbacks in Alex Austin and Marco Wilson.
Oh, excellent picks, friend.
Thank you very much. Because that cornerback room is pretty much set with those top 3, right? You have Christian Gonzalez, you have John Jones, and you have Marcus Jones. We kind of thought that Alex Austin would find himself in that sort of 4 rotational mix, and he hasn't when everybody's healthy. It's been, we thought he could vie for the opposite cornerback position, opposite Christian Gonzalez. John Jones would be in the slot. And Marcus Jones might be a guy who would be in no man's land. We mentioned that as sort of a position battle with Austin and Marcus Jones. But they've sort of, I don't want to say they've given it to Marcus Jones, but, veteran presence, healthy. He goes out there and he's earned it first, which has kind of put Alex Austin in a bind where he's out there with the second team. He's been good. He's been bad. He hasn't been consistent. So I'm looking for him to come out here and shine in that role and show why he deserves to be on the team. And then Marco Wilson, kind of in the same boat, comes in late last year like Austin did, shows some flashes. But once you get sort of down that cornerback depth chart with a guy like Isaiah Bolden, who is also, someone to watch here. He didn't make my list, but guy who could come in as a kick returner. Marco Wilson isn't really a kick returner, so does Bolden have more value on the roster because of that? Marco Wilson, Alex Austin have to shine and have to show that they can be depth pieces in that cornerback room.
Yeah, another interesting part of that is the fact that Alex Austin, during some practices, has gotten opportunities in the slot. Not a ton, but we're talking about Jonathan Jones, probably not going to play. He was banged up a couple practices ago. Marcus Jones hasn't practiced in a while. He's most likely not going to play today. Shaun Wade has been the top slot option for the Patriots, and he's played well.
Yeah,
another guy, he's not on the list, but another guy to maybe watch out for.
Watch the entire defensive back room. We'll get to another one in a little while.
But I also do think that Alex Austin, maybe when we get a little deeper into the rotation, is going to get some opportunities to show what he can do in the slot, kind of like what we saw from Shaun Wade last season. So a little other part of that to look out for. We haven't seen Marco Wilson in the slot, so how that corner rotation works out, especially, again, with the injuries, they're going to have opportunities to show what they got.
Yep. All right. Talk to me about Caden Wallace. Why is he a player to watch tonight?
I mean, he might be your franchise left tackle. Yeah. We don't know yet, but when the offensive line was healthy and you had Caden Wallace at left and then Chooks on the right, things looked pretty good. Now, to be fair, those were the first 2 days in padded practices. A lot could have potentially changed if he had stayed in the lineup, but we're still talking about a rookie who, if he can play at least solid football for you, makes a huge difference on that offensive line. So I'm going to have my eye on him. Maybe not so much right now because there's so many things going on and you want to see the receivers and everything. Right. But in terms of, okay, if we get a replay and there was a big run, I'm going to be looking at whatever side Caden Wallace is on to see what his involvement was on the play. And then whenever that film comes out, I'm going to be laser focused on number 70.
Taylor's not sleeping tonight. He's just going to be knee-deep in the film as soon as it comes
I don't even know if you're joking.
I'm not joking.
That's exactly what's going to be happening.
Serious.
Umbrella Academy on the TV and then film in my lap.
I walk into the press room today. Taylor's watching Netflix on one screen and cut-ups on the other. I'm like, how do you dual screen it with 2 completely different things? One's football, one's a Netflix show.
ADHD.
Gets
secret sauce.
It works. All right, Del Pettis, another defensive back who I'm going to have my eyes on tonight, and it's because of not only how much he's come on the last couple days, but also his ability as a special teamer, and also Marte Mapu being out and not practicing, where he's a guy who could land on IR here. I don't think he's competed at all throughout training camp.
I think he participated the first 2 days. Okay. He hasn't participated since
pads came on. He hasn't even stretched. He hasn't been out here. He hasn't, gone through individual drills. He's been out with his jersey and hasn't really
standing
done anything.
Behind, exactly. Just like going through mental reps.
Mental reps. And so he's not going to be on the 53 opening day roster. Right now it's looking like Duggar, it's looking like Peppers, and it's looking like Jalen Hawkins, who's had a great start to camp.
Yeah.
Are they going to keep a fourth safety? And if they are, it's going to be probably Del Pettis. Mm-hmm. So if he can come out here and shine and use those defensive reps to his advantage, he can basically warrant himself a 53-man roster spot instead of being like, oh, well, we like you, but we're going to save room here, this and that. And I know you've talked about having him on the practice squad, someone they can move up and down. But if he comes out here and kicks ass, keep him on your roster, because then also if you do, subject him to waiver, somebody else can pick him up. So watch Del Pettis. I know Doug Kyde, our friend from the Boston Herald, is all over Del Pettis. He wrote a bunch of stuff the last couple days.
It's like everybody on the beat's leading their own little hype train, and
Exactly.
Doug is the conductor of the Del Pettis Express.
For sure. All right, that's Del Pettis. We'll give you your final one, Taylor. It's Kayshon Boutte.
It is Kayshon Boutte. Boutte is on a roll. Every day in practice, it seems, he's making some kind of impressive catch. Really very rarely see him make mistakes. Hasn't been perfect. There's been a drop here and there, like some that are kind of behind him and he struggles to adjust. But in terms of high pointing the football, tracking it on deeper throws, making contested grabs in the kind of underneath area of the field, Kayshon Boutte's looked really good. And he's someone who, with Tyquan Thornton out, with Jalen Reagor being more of a special teamer and, vertical threat, if we're being honest, and a well-rounded receiver, I think Kayshon Boutte can really insert himself into that outside wide receiver conversation. He mentioned to us that he and Javon Baker are the two guys on the offense who move around from X to Z. So I'd love to see Kayshon Boutte, like I did with Javon Baker, seize this opportunity and maybe carve out a role for himself and start giving this offense the juice it needs to exceed expectations potentially.
All right, I'm going to have to give you a sixth player to watch here because I'm curious if I'm looking way too much into this, and I probably am. You know how I operate. Unofficial depth chart comes out for the Patriots in the game release. It's unofficial.
Go on, if you want a good depth chart, go on mine on my
Exactly.
Twitter. That's the depth chart you want to be looking for. Shameless self-plug. Continue.
But so this is compiled by Patriots Media Relations. I believe it's required by the league because it has to go out in, in the game releases every week. And now they're not necessarily fully updated. There's guys that, like, for example, Tucker Addington hasn't been added yet. It's not that serious, and it's not even produced by the team. It's produced by
very unofficial.
The PR stuff. Again, I need to preface it, though. It's very unofficial. But Joshua Uche is buried on this thing at outside linebacker. It is.
Is he actually?
It is Matthew Judon, Anthony Jennings, O'Shea Jimenez, and then Joshua Uche behind him there.
Is it? I think it's like one row, and then O'Shane is under them.
I don't know, but because it's usually first team, second team, third team. If you look at my Twitter, you'll see what we're talking about. Regardless,
I'll go with it. I'll run with it.
let's run with it.
Because, yeah, it's
Let's
unofficial.
just
It's
say
not
they
real.
Did bury Joshua Uche
Yes.
there again, like you mentioned, unofficial. Is he a guy who has to come out here and shine tonight? Is his spot on this roster like kind of up in the air, especially with the way Zimenez has come on, and if Judon's here as well, Jennings plays well? Like, what's the deal with Joshua Uche on a one-year deal?
I don't think he plays today because he hasn't practiced in a while. On
True.
top of that, I think he's on such a cheap deal.
Yeah.
He may not be happy with it. I think the team is very happy with it. So, I mean, it's a prove-it deal. You need to go out and you need to show that you deserve more money than what you got on that one-year deal. I'm really, not in a disrespectful way, I'm not really thinking about Uche because if he's on the field, awesome. If he's not, other guys are going to have to step up. And like I mentioned, I don't think Uche is someone where availability and consistency are necessarily hallmarks of his game.
True.
So at this point, as much as I hate to say it, he's more of that kind of Marcus Jones type for me. I've said it before, where if he's healthy, awesome, that's fantastic. If he's on the field and doing his thing. If he's not, I kind of expected it.
I will add, too, that, guys like Jake Andrews, guys like Cole Strange, guys like Kendrick Bourne, who are on PUP IR, haven't practiced all summer. Jake Andrews done for the year. They're listed on that unofficial thing, too.
Yeah.
It's so unofficial that, like, they don't have all the again, it's me. I don't want to say me trying to make a storyline, but I did think it was interesting how far down Uche was compared to those other guys. Exactly. You got to stir the pot sometimes. Yeah, bingo. All right, before we get out of here, Taylor, it's preseason game number 1. Mm-hmm. There's 3 games total. The last one is kind of, sometimes they used to call the second to last one the dress rehearsal. Sometimes now it's the third. Sometimes guys don't play at all. How important is game 1? Like, if a guy goes out here and sucks, does he lose his roster spot? And vice versa, can a guy come out here and kick ass and shine and win himself, a roster spot on game 1? How fluid, how important is this, for making the roster and for kind of shaping that thing up to 53?
I think it's kind of like a game where you say you can't win a game, in the first half, but you can lose one. Okay. It's kind of that sort of thing. Now, the fact that we have one roster cut down day, I think is huge.
Yeah.
It used to be after, I think it was every game or everyone after the first week.
That's a good point.
We had to start cutting guys down. So I don't think a bad game is necessarily so dramatically, in terms of ending your time with this team. But I do think that if you completely stink it up and you're a fringe player, obviously, if you're a bottom roster and they, somebody else gets hurt and they need to make a roster move, that could mean that you're on the chopping block. So I think this is an important day, especially because I think we're going to see veterans more in the second game. So there may be less time for those young guys. But then again, in the third game, usually if you're still around, you'll have some time to show off what you got. So Is it important? Yes, you always want to make a good impression, but I don't think it's end all be all.
Of course. I'm with you. It's going to be obviously exciting. The stands are starting to fill up here. The field is starting to fill up with players actually warming up. So we're getting down to it. It's going to be obviously an exciting one. It's going to be a fun one to watch. So make sure you keep it with myself, at Mike Kadlick on Twitter, and at tkyles39 on Twitter as well. We'll have you covered post-game on CLNSmedia.com. We'll also be back on here on Patriots Press Pass on YouTube for a post-game show. Right now we're thinking around 10:30, depending on what time we got out of the locker room and things like that. But make sure, again, to follow along on Twitter at Patriots CLNS as well. We'll keep you updated there for everything. So, again, it's game day. We're excited. The juice is starting to flow. We're in the stadium. So make sure to follow along. It's going to be a super fun one. Go Patriots. Have fun watching Drake Maye. Have fun watching Javon Baker. Have fun watching all those guys, Jalen Polk. Quick cameo for Brian Hines, maybe. Who's your one player to watch? Brian Hines is here hanging out.
Drake Maye, more than 67.5 passing yards on Prize Picks. Use promo code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Terms apply.
Excellent.
That'll do it. Drake Maye, over 67.5 on Prize Picks. Thanks for watching. We'll see you after the game. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Again, we'll see you after the game here on Patriots Press Pass.